Disclaimer. Everything in this video is my opinion, which means it's correct and you're free to argue, but it's my opinion. Amiibo has been running for 8 years now. It launched alongside Smash 4 on the Wii U, if memory serves, somewhere around there. And that makes sense because the first wave of Amiibo was the Smash series, right? Now, we're finding, and don't quote me on this because these are unconfirmed, but we're finding that there may be Smash series Amiibo reprints coming down the line. People keep asking me when and where these are going to happen, like I have some kind of inside Amiibo knowledge, and I know about as much as you do, aside from the logical inferences that I've made and information that I've tracked down. But this kind of makes me realize that many Amiibo haven't been reprinted in years. Some of them have never been reprinted at all. The Mii Gunner 3-pack, for example, sold once, it was exclusive to Toys R Us, and never showed up again. I was at a local game store earlier today, and I found each of the 3 Mii Amiibo selling for a total of $150. That's actually down from where it used to be back 2-3 years ago. Around the pandemic, they would sell for upwards of $300 to $400 if they were all together. Don't even ask me about new in box, I have nightmares about that price. But a lot of Amiibo have never been reprinted. At the same time, a lot of modern games don't use Amiibo to any real degree. And I don't see why they would, because the Wii U and 3DS games didn't really use them either. There's only a few games that actually have any real interaction with Amiibo. That's Smash Brothers, obviously, with the Amiibo training thing that we do on this channel. There's Zelda Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, what with the whole scanning in the items and getting stuff. And then there's Animal Crossing, which actually has an Amiibo card for every villager in the freaking game. Except for Series 6, which has never been confirmed or rumored, but, well, it's been rumored, but that sucker's got to come out at some point. So this makes me wonder, well, Nintendo's kind of stuck with a few options. They can either tell their fans, hey, if you want this functionality, you're going to have to buy an Amiibo that we sold 5 years ago and never again. And I just hope you're willing to spend as much on the figure as you did on the console, you know what I'm saying? Like, $300? Yes, sir, go for it. Or they can find a new way around. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that Amiibo needs a reboot. And the fans have been sort of soft rebooting Amiibo for a while. One of the underpinning technologies of Amiibo tournaments is Amiibo emulation. I don't think emulation is really the right word because it technically functions exactly the same on the original hardware, but emulation is the closest word we have. Using things like power saves for Amiibo, or my personal favorite, the Amiibo Flask. Actually, I forget what he called it, but the inventor of the Amiibo Flask has a modern version now, which is really cool. It's much cheaper too. Using these devices, or using Amiibo cards that you bought on eBay or Etsy, or just an Intag 215 chip that you've scribbled Pyra onto in Sharpie, you can scan in that Amiibo into the game without having to pay an arm and a leg. But it's not really the same. And I don't think it'll ever be the same. So Nintendo's rock in a hard place is that they can reboot it, or they can make their games use Amiibo and force people to pay a lot of money for the old one. And I think they should reboot it. But what would that look like? The important point to start from is cost, and more importantly, profit. Nintendo is a profit-seeking company. I wouldn't expect anything less from them. I think, in my opinion, part of the reason Nintendo doesn't make as many Amiibo as they could is not because they, for some reason, dislike Amiibo but are still willing to produce them. It's because Amiibo are expensive. And so to effectively rent the labor of the factories or to produce the materials needed for the Amiibo in sufficient quantity is expensive. It's almost too expensive. Nintendo also sells these for $16. Now, you might think $16 is a bit expensive, and it certainly is if you're buying 5 or 6 of them, or in my case, 200. Don't judge me, I took 8 years to get to that number, and a lot of them I got at garage sales for free or cheap. But then you consider the cost that figures of similar quality have from other developers, and you realize, oh, that's actually not that bad at all. If you don't believe me, go into your local used game store and go to the wall of like anime girl figurines that don't have pants on. You know, every game store has one. No, it's true. You haven't looked. It has one, trust me. And realize like how much these cost, like hundreds of dollars, and they probably don't have much more raw materials than 4 to 5 Amiibo put together. If that makes sense. If that doesn't make sense, forget what I said. But oftentimes figures of this quality and of this durability are very expensive, is my point. And actually the cost of the chip is one of the smallest costs in the Amiibo. Intag 215 chips only cost about a quarter. So the new rebooted Amiibo would have to be cheaper. Maybe it wouldn't always be a fancy figurine. And I've thought a lot about this, about what else might Amiibo do. And I think Nintendo has actually already tapped on their next step for Amiibo, or at least their logical next step. I think Nintendo should keep making Amiibo figurines, because people do love Amiibo figurines, but they need to go back and reboot, or reprint, if you will. Print is kind of a pun here. A lot of their old Amiibo, they need to package them like trading cards. I know, no, hold on, trust me. My ideal version of an Amiibo reboot isn't one where we walk into GameStop and find that every Amiibo figure ever has been reprinted. That's not it. And not only is that not realistic, but that actually wouldn't be helpful, because there's two kinds of people, and this will loop back to trading cards in a sec. There's two kinds of people who want Amiibo. There's the collectors who like to collect them, and then there's the users who use them, okay? You'll often find collectors keeping them new in box, whereas users open them up, right? That's a good way to tell the difference. Well, the thing is, a lot of the demand for Amiibo figures is split down the middle between the two. So you have people playing an old game. Now, it depends on the game, depends on the figure, okay? And the more recent the game, the more the demand is on the user's side, because there are more people playing the new game, whereas the older the game, the more it's on the collector's side. But overall, it's about split 50-50. So if you want to cut the price of Amiibo down, you want to cut the demand down, you got to satisfy the users. And the way to do that is to make cheaper alternatives to Amiibo. This is what I was talking about with power saves, where you buy the $20, $30 power saves, I guess it's 40 now, and then you have access to all Amiibo, right? So what Nintendo should do with the trading cards is they should effectively put out maybe Pokemon card game style booster packs even, where you don't know which Amiibo you're going to get. And just card stock with the Intag chip in them, you know, you can scan it just like it's a card from the Etsy store that you bought it from a couple years ago. I don't know. You've seen these cards, I hope. If you haven't, you should check them out. They're very cool. And you scan it in and it's the Amiibo. And that satisfies the users. And that drops the price of the Amiibo. And once the prices of the Amiibo go down, and they've already been crashing quite a bit over the last 2 years, but there's some that are still highly valuable, then the collectors can get the Amiibo that they want, and the demand for the Amiibo has been largely satisfied. This keeps the price of the Amiibo figures down in the long run, and it is almost self-reinforcing because you're creating officially licensed Amiibo products. Now, as far as the trading packs go, Nintendo has quite a bit to choose from, and this would be very, very low cost. There's over 1,000 individual Amiibo IDs registered, several hundred of them being Animal Crossing characters, as you might imagine. Those might need to stay restrained in their own kind of booster pack. But otherwise, you've got the Smash characters, you've got the different series of Zelda, you've got the one-offs like QBB, you've got the Super Mario series, you've got everything to choose from. Hundreds and hundreds of Amiibo figures whose identities can be slapped onto an Amiibo chip, stuck into a dollar of card stock with quality printing, and then put into a booster pack. Maybe not even $1. How much does card stock cost? It's not $1. I don't know why I said that. But either way, you could stick 8 to 10 of them in one booster pack, sell it for $6, and watch people trade. And then suddenly it stops becoming a question of, are we going to have enough Amiibo figures to have to worry about? then it becomes a question of, do I have $4 or $5 to buy the most expensive of the Amiibo cards? The Amiibo card format is clever and unique and awesome. And I think the fact that Nintendo adopted it after the fans adopted it when they were emulating Amiibo during the Wii U days is quite telling as to how versatile and flexible an option it is. And I hope Nintendo embraces that. But what about the developer side of things? That's the other problem, is that there's no point in buying Amiibo if there's no use for Amiibo. Well, the way that Nintendo operates, to my knowledge, is that the developer of a game is also in charge of the manufacturing of the merchandise. Now that doesn't really make sense to me, but I've gathered that information from how Sakurai talks in his interviews about Amiibo and Amiibo merchandise and whatnot. If I'm incorrect, it's my opinion, so it's correct, but feel free to argue in the comments. But if that's the case, if manufacturing Amiibo becomes as simple as just printing off cards, suddenly, not only does Nintendo not have to outsource this production to China, they can do it in Japan, but also they can do it for much cheaper. That frees up a lot of budget for the game devs, and a lot of time, and a lot of hassle. So the game devs can be directed by Nintendo higher-ups, who recognize the need for an Amiibo reboot, I hope, to put more time and effort into Amiibo compatibility. As for individual games, I'm a bit fresh out of ideas at the exact moment, although I've written about that at amiibodoctor.com in the past, so I'll link to that in the description. I think there's a lot of other options and ways for an Amiibo reboot to happen. I do wonder if it wouldn't be possible to maybe incorporate it into the Nintendo Switch Online cell phone app, where perhaps the Amiibo that you own is connected with your Nintendo profile instead of, say, the physical figure itself. There's a lot of different ideas and a lot of different ways. I like my trading card one the most. But actually, I'm mostly interested in what you guys think. Does Amiibo need a reboot? Should we wait for the next console generation for another reboot? Should we just let it die? Where do you think Amiibo's going? Leave an answer in the comments below. And I do read every comment that's ever left on my channel. So I will see it. Thank you for watching.